All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Theory and Theology. On this podcast, we talk about cultures and religion and spirituality and all sorts of fun things in those realms. So I'm about to this is a complete spoiler alert. So if you're gonna go watch this movie, just letting you know, I'm about to spoil it for you. The movie, Ocean of Pearls. So I talked about that a little bit in the last recording. It took me forever to figure out what it was named. And my memory's super faulty, but I eventually found it. So Ocean of Pearls is the movie I will be spoiling for you today. I'm not going to do like a full movie review, just like some parts I want to touch on, but it's totally going to be a spoiler. So if you're going to watch the movie, I'd recommend buying it. It did not show up on my Amazon Prime. It said it wasn't available in my area. I'm not really connected to a VPN at the moment, and I didn't want to do that again just to figure out how to watch this movie from a different IP. So I was like, whatever. So I streamed it off Dailymotion. It's one of those movies I'm probably going to buy. Not at the moment, but yeah, I streamed it off Dailymotion. It's in like multiple 19 or so minute parts. Not 19 parts, but 19-minute segments, maybe like 5 or 6 of those. And so I rewatched it on there. I thought I had originally watched it on Netflix, but maybe I had originally watched it on Amazon Prime. But honestly, I don't know. This was like multiple years. And it says the movie is from 2008, so it was probably not that long ago. It wasn't 2008 when I watched it, but it wasn't 2022 when I originally watched it either. I want to say it was before the Rona, so it was 2019 or before. I'm pretty sure I didn't watch it during the Rona, but I don't know, whatever. So basically that movie is about a character who is of the Sikh culture and religion. Not a character, I don't want to call him like a character, but basically in the movie he plays a character. I don't know the actor's real life or anything, but he plays a Sikh adult male who is dating a woman who I believe is also from a Sikh family, and both of their families are kind of part of like the same community in Toronto, I think it is. And then he moves to Detroit for a job opportunity, and so it seems like the family wanted him to stay local, not focus so much on his career as a doctor. Not that they didn't want him to be one, but they really had their family values, their religious values, and keeping the family close was like important. But that didn't seem to be like a major theme where they were like trying to force him to stay home at all. It was just kind of like something that came up. As like you can kind of get the vibe of it. There's like some tension between this main character and his father. Like they have like a tense relationship. The dad, I guess, is kind of particular with his son for his own reasons. He's a little like trying to help him to be cautious, and he seems to kind of try to train his son to live his life in a bit of a cautious way, stay close to the religion, stay close to the community, like even if it's not physically, like stay within your heritage and live your life that way. That's going to be the best way for you. But according to the son, it seems like he doesn't really seem to understand too much why the father is lecturing him all the time. Like, there's no, like, back and forth conversation. The son, even as an adult, feels tense towards his father because the father isn't very open with him, isn't very conversational. But whenever he has something to say to the son, it's more like critical lecture style of, like, telling him what to do, but he doesn't really, like, open up about anything. He's just like, do this way kind of thing. And so, you know, the son feels a little, like, let down that his dad doesn't really seem to want to communicate in the way that he needs. And then the dad seems a little let down that the son is kind of going more towards, like, you know, modern kind of, like, you know, different lifestyle. And he the son couldn't really understand. He was kind of like, why would you move from another country to come to a whole different area, a whole different place, and still live your life exactly the same way in the new country as you did in the old one? That's kind of like the question he's struggling with. Like, why is our culture not, like, adapting to our surroundings in Toronto? And so he's smart and starts getting opportunities and, you know, that are pulling him away from the community, and he's kind of forced to make choices regarding, like, religious traditions and different sorts of things, from, you know, discrimination. And because it was near, you know, September 11th time period, I think, when this movie, not when it was actually filmed, like I mentioned, 2008 was when it was actually released, but I feel like it was set during, like, a little after September 11th time period. And so, you know, he knew from traveling experience that he was having trouble at the airports because he wore a turban. And, you know, people didn't really know the difference between, like, Muslim garb and, you know, Sikh garb. And also, people were kind of, like, profiling at that time. Like, this wasn't a big theme in the movie. It wasn't a huge theme, but, you know, as someone like myself who's a minority, I definitely picked up on, like, what was going on. It's like, oh, there's people with eyes on him, and, like, they kind of are assuming that, like, he's dangerous, and they're treating him in a way where they feel like he's less than because of how he looks, because he's wearing a turban, and he's got dark skin, and he's got a beard, and, you know, he looks like Middle Eastern, you know. I mean, I don't know if he's from Pakistan or India in the movie, but, you know, Americans are typical for not really knowing the difference with a lot of things. It's like you see somebody with some kind of head covering and assume a bunch of stuff, you know. It's like he wasn't even wearing the type of head covering that, you know, extremists would be wearing. And just because someone, I mean, he's not Muslim, he was Sikh, but just because someone might be Muslim doesn't mean that they're a terrorist either. So, you know, but that was kind of the unfortunate sentiment, you know, around that time. I remember my friend was telling me, like, in high school, because we were I was, like, in high school when September 11th happened, which is nuts to think. But yeah, I was in high school still. It was like 2001, and was it 2001? Whatever year it was that I had zero period, because I had a class that started at like 7 a.m. So I left the house before my family was usually out of the house or really even up and moving. I would leave first a lot of the time, and so if there was news to be heard, I wouldn't hear it because I was out of the house, you know, because I had a class that started at 7 because it was zero period, so it was before first period at 8. But then, you know, it must have been my senior year, because that means I got out late. I mean, I got out early. I got out at like noon because I had all my classes finished. I think I had 0 through... did we have 6 periods? I think we had 6 periods, but I had 0 through whatever was the second one to the last. So I would leave an hour early, And then the second semester of my senior year, I left at noon. I had 0 through whatever was lunch. I would leave at lunch. And I wasn't working. I would just go home and play guitar, basically. But, yeah, so it must have been my senior year. So it must have been, if it was September, no. If it was September, it was the beginning of my senior year. Yeah. So that was 2021, yeah. Because I graduated high school in 2022, June of 2022. So yeah, it was then. So, yeah, I remember my friend was telling me about her high school friend. You know, they used to run cross country, and you know, in LA, you know, there's not like fields and places you can like run in. Like, you would just run on the streets. Like, you would run on the streets. Like, you could run to like the Strand at the beach, pretty much, run along the beach and things like that. But you would usually just run around the city. So people who were involved in like long distance running, you know, they would have different paths that they would take throughout the city. And so they would run, and like, you know, these are high school students, and they would cross the street. So this friend was a year younger than me. So this friend was a junior in high school when this happened. And it was after September 11th, after the beginning of the school year, sometime during 2021, where she was running cross country, but practice, and it was after school, and her and a whole lot of students were running, you know, so they're in the public, you know, running. And she was behind one of her running friends, and the friend was in front of her. And you know, when you're running across the street in the city, there's cars, you know, because the lanes of cars, you know, they stop because there's a light for them, so they let you run across the highway street or whatever. So it was a situation like that where they were crossing the street, and somebody yelled out the window, you know, one of the cars that wasn't a student, nobody. They're like on some random highway street crossing the street during their allotted time, and somebody yells Osama bin Laden like out their car window. And my friend thought she knew which car it was, and the rest of the crew, you know, they're running, so they just all ran. And she's pretty sure that her friend heard this. Like, this is back before people used to really run with earbuds in and stuff. And, like, you know, like, there wasn't, like, a small device that you could really put, like, in your pocket and be running around. Like, you'd have to have, like, a CD player or, like, a Walkman or something. Like, this was, like, kind of back before everyone had, like, smartphones, cell phones. I don't remember if the iPhone or iPod was even out then. It might have been, but it still, when it first came out, not everybody could afford them, and high school students didn't really tend to have them way back then. I think in high school I still had the Sony Ericsson flip phone. And then maybe that year, I think my junior year I had the Sony Ericsson flip phone, and then I think my senior year I either had that same phone or I got the Razr that year. So this is back when people still had like sidekicks, and like the BlackBerry was the most famous phone. So it's not like people were listening to stuff while they were running, because usually people didn't have anything, you know, that wasn't like a popular thing people would do like for school running and stuff. So it is likely that if you were gonna yell something at somebody, they would hear you. And somebody yelled that, and my friend, you know, she was explaining this experience, how she kind of like stopped in the middle of the road. Mind you, this is like a highway street, so the light's eventually going to turn green. And she like stood purposely in front of that car and was just like staring them down, you know, like through the window. And it's like, kind of like, what are you going to do? You know, while all of the cross country runners were like running across the street still, like that friend of mine just kind of stood back and like was just like staring down that car, just kind of like, dude, that's not cool. Like, you don't fuck with my friends, kind of thing. But I don't think she stayed there staring down the car too long. Like, I don't think the light had turned green and then she was still there. Like, I think she was just doing it for that amount of time. So yeah, stuff like that would even happen, but it wasn't like ultra common kind of thing. I think that's more so when I got more interested in learning about Islam, because I did have Muslim friends, but like I never really talked to them about their religion that much. And then I was like, what does this religion actually teach? And I mean, it was maybe like a couple years before that, actually, but I still knew the same people. I think I'd already read the Quran before that. Like maybe a year or 2 years before that, I already read it. The Quran's actually a really quick read. It's not that thick of a book, and it actually flows very easily, like story-wise. More so, I think, than the Bible, in my opinion. Like, it's a little easier to follow. Like, not that I understand it, but it's easier to follow, like, story-wise. So I really liked reading it, not like on a regular basis or anything, but I always liked reading it and liked hearing like the musical aspects of the prayers and stuff. So I really never really had like hate towards the religion or anything like that. Especially because I knew people who were that religion, and they were some of the nicest people I had ever met in my whole life. The whole family, like all their families were. So I was never in a negative experience with people who were Muslim. So I kind of never was like thinking, oh, they might be a terrorist or whatever. Like that never would ever have crossed my mind back then at all. Like I could totally see the difference between like extremist viewpoints. Like I used to watch Al Jazeera and stuff like that, like where they would have all these kind of like clips of people doing all kinds of like, protests and all this kind of stuff in the streets. And like there was a point where they were like taking the contractors and like torturing or killing them and stuff like that. And like that was nothing. I was like, these are just insane people. Like they're all over the world. There are all kinds of insane people all over the world who do all kinds of ridiculous stuff. Just because someone's an extremist and claims a religion doesn't mean that the religion is really that way. And I do find it unfortunate that, when people have like a traditional garb that other people associate with, some kind of religious extremist, and it's not even the same religion. I mean, that's like, I can't even begin to understand what that would be like, like I have some friends from India that are like really dark skin, like darker than myself, and I'm very dark skinned and they're dark. So it's kind of interesting that I've had friends that are from India that are super dark skinned like that when they wear hats and stuff, like they don't have accents when they're talking, the ones who were born in the US, and when they like have hats on and stuff, they're literally treated like black people, so they kind of understand a bit of like the experience of like what it's like to be misidentified as another culture and how you get treated because of it. And then when people find out, oh, you're just Indian, like, okay, like they'll treat them like way different. And so I always found that interesting, but I don't think I've really been too much. I mean, it happens a little bit with like African American and then like African heritage. Like I do get treated a little bit different by some types of Americans when they know that I have like African ancestry, like direct African people like in my family. Like now, like, half my family is immigrants, so like once they find that out, then they're kind of like they might act a little, not everybody, but I've had experiences where people act a little different when they know something else about me that they think is more maybe socially acceptable. Like it's happened more in like educational settings and employment related, like employment training type of settings, where people kind of think differently about African Americans compared to how they feel about Africans. Just the reputations and prejudices and things like that. Like, so it's, I mean, I don't know. I don't really do much with it. I'm just kind of like, whatever, that's just how it is. But yeah, I find it interesting. Um, yeah, and this guy in the movie is just making a lot of decisions, trying to fit in more and more and more to like the American culture, to like move up in his career, and he's getting passed over because he's, not American, because he's, of the Sikh religion, and people are associating his religion with a whole different group of people. And, mind you, they're associating his group with a lot of people that, like, with skewed perspectives, like associating him as a Muslim, but not necessarily like a regular Muslim. He's associating with like extremists. He's associated with like extremist types of people, even though he's not like that at all. Like, his family believes in community service, and like they were even pressuring him to come back for like a camp where they give back, and like some other types of like community service, feeding the homeless and that kind of stuff. Like, the dad was like, how are you gonna be a good Sikh if you're not doing, like, I think it was called seva, like some kind of type of like a community service type of action that's part of the religion, that I don't really know what that is, but I do want to study it. I just don't know what it is yet. But I just found it interesting how he was just kind of like forced to make all these decisions, and then how he felt people might judge him based on those decisions he was making, or how people did judge him, or people, some people like maybe respected him more before he started bending, towards the Western society expectations, and I don't want to say standards. I mean, maybe it is standards. I don't know. When I say standards, it almost seems to imply that I assume that it's better than other cultures. I kind of don't, but I think in the U.S., most of the time, the Western U.S. views are treated as a type of a standard of living, like that it's a better culture than others. It definitely has its benefits and strong points, but I don't see it all as all better. I don't see any culture as all better than another one. There's definitely stuff I gravitate towards in other cultures, that there are cultures that I'm a part of that I don't really have that in those cultures. And so that's why I do love to learn a lot about different cultures, is because it kind of gives me a window into like different options of things to choose from that maybe might help different things in my life to work better. Like, if it works for them, sometimes it'll work for me. So I've definitely learned a lot about like different methods of eating, and different methods, like outlooks on life, and different ways to like arrange your like week and stuff like that, just from studying other cultures. Just kind of different lifestyle balance related stuff, and how you're kind of taught to live your life the best way. Every culture has their own method of what is considered the best. But yeah, that's pretty much my spoiler. I don't think I spoiled like too much detail, but that's about as much as I have to say about that. As far as the religion stuff, but all right. I've been on hold for like almost an hour and a half now for work. I think I'm gonna have to use this personal phone and call these people and tell them that I've been on hold since like God only knows when, like about 12 o'clock. So, all right. But that's all I really had to say. I try not to spoil too much of the movie, but that's definitely a spoiler if you don't want anything revealed about it. But hopefully that's interesting enough if you want to watch the movie. I already explained how to find it. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna log off of here and end my work break. Thanks for listening.